Hello, and welcome to Divorce Happy Hour Lunch and Learn series. I'm your host today, John Knocklinger. I am the co owner of New Jersey Divorce Solutions, Private Knocklinger, a divorce and family law firm located in central New Jersey. So, this is part of our series on little concepts that most people find confusing about divorce and family law. And today we're going to try to clear up one more, and that's this concept of uncontested divorce. You hear a lot about uncontested divorce, and many people have their own idea about what an uncontested divorce is. So I'm hoping that today we are going to be able to unpack what it is, what it isn't, help you understand whether or not going down the road of an uncontested divorce is the right road for you, and then talk a little bit about what your next steps would be if this is something that you should do. So let's talk about an uncontested divorce. So many people come to us and they say, oh, I have an uncontested divorce. This is going to be really simple. But most of the time, they don't really mean that they have an uncontested divorce, at least as far as lawyers are concerned and the court system is concerned. At its very core, an uncontested divorce is where you get divorced with an agreement. So once you and your spouse have signed something that resolves everything, resolves custody, parenting time, child support, college expenses, distribution of all your assets, all your debt, tax issues, alimony. Once you have an agreement that resolves all of those things and you put it into something in writing and you both sign it, then you will get divorced uncontested. So now that that's sort of the concept of what it is, let me tell you what it isn't. Many people think that uncontested divorce just means that you and your spouse both agree to get divorced. That is not an uncontested divorce. In fact, just so you're aware, in New Jersey, you don't need a reason to get divorced. It's enough to say you have irreconcilable differences with your spouse. You don't have to prove them. You don't have to outline them. You don't have to convince a judge that you really have differences with your spouse that mean you should get divorced. You don't have to prove them. So the mere fact that you and your spouse both want to get divorced does not make your case uncontested. What makes your case uncontested is that not only do you both want to get divorced, but you both agree on everything. Now, if you don't agree on something and you need to go through a process where the two of you get to the point where you agree, that is a contested divorce. Now, contested divorce doesn't mean you're contesting the divorce. As I just said a minute ago, it doesn't matter why you're getting divorced. You don't have to prove why you're getting divorced. But the contested part comes in terms of the issues that you have. So if you and your spouse can sit down and actually go through each and every issue, talk about your kids, come up with a parenting time schedule, talk about who's going to cover them with health insurance, talk about extracurricular activities, what's okay, what isn't okay, how are you going to deal with those activities going forward, how you deal with college expenses, what you're going to do with the marital home. If you can go down each and everything and come up with an agreement with your spouse, then your divorce is likely uncontested from the beginning. Now, I just said a minute ago that technically an uncontested divorce is where you have something in writing signed by both parties and then you get divorced. That makes it uncontested. So what's interesting is that many cases start contested, meaning you don't have an agreement on everything, but at some point down the road, it becomes uncontested because you and your spouse have signed an agreement that resolves all of your issues. So when people first start their divorce, what do we mean if you come to our office and say, I have an uncontested divorce? Well, really the only people who have uncontested divorce from the very beginning are the ones I just spoke about a minute ago. You and your spouse have sat down and you have outlined everything that you want to be in an agreement. So if you and your spouse can outline everything, then you can start your divorce as an uncontested divorce. And the way one of those would go is you would give that itemized list to the attorney, and that itemized list would be put into a formal legal settlement agreement that the attorney would draft, that you and your spouse would both look at. Your spouse would hopefully have their own attorney as well, and you both would sign. That is the quickest divorce you can possibly have, because you and your spouse have done the hard work. You've sat down and you've gone through each and every issue and you've reached a resolution by yourselves. And all you're really having an attorney do is put it into a legal document that adds additional layers of protection for you, and your spouse's attorney will put in additional layers of protection for him or her. And that agreement signed, and then we file a complaint for divorce with the court, and then you get divorced. That's the quickest divorce process you can possibly have, is to reach an agreement with your spouse and then bring it to an attorney. Because if you do anything else, if you come to an attorney without a full agreement, it's a contested divorce. Those are the only two possibilities here. It's either contested, where you don't have an agreement on everything, or it's uncontested, where you and your spouse have agreed to everything. Now, caution. Make sure you have an agreement with your spouse before you come to us and say you have an uncontested divorce. What I mean is, sometimes people will yes you to death. You know if your spouse is a yeser. You know if there's somebody who doesn't like to fight, so instead of fighting with you, they just say yes to everything. Not helpful. It's not helpful for you to have your spouse just yes you to death. You really want to make sure that your spouse actually agrees to everything. Because if you and your spouse sit down and you guys can itemize your list, you can come up with an agreement on everything, you really have just made the whole process go so much smoother. Now, do you and your spouse need to agree to everything pursuant to what the law would say? No. That's the whole point here, is the two of you figure out what is fair to you, what makes sense to you. A lot of times lawyers make the process a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, you know your kids. Do you really need an attorney or a judge to sit down and tell you what to do with your kids? No, you don't. Most people lose sight of the fact that they're capable of reaching an agreement on just about everything without getting attorneys involved, without getting the court system involved. But what does that require? Of course, it requires you to put your emotions aside. For you forget why you're getting divorced. Forget the why. It doesn't matter. What did I just tell you a second ago? The why doesn't matter in terms of you getting the divorce ultimately, because the judge doesn't care. The judge just needs to know that one of you wants a divorce, because guess what? That's all it takes. That's another misconception, is that both parties have to agree to get divorced. Not true. If one person doesn't want to get divorced, the person that wants a divorce is still getting a divorce. Now, that might mean that the case takes longer and costs more, because the person that doesn't want a divorce maybe is thinking, well, maybe if I drag it out a little bit longer, they'll decide that they really want to stay married to me. But other than that, it does not matter. So when we talk about an uncontested divorce, again, we mean you and your spouse sitting down, coming up with a list of what you agree to. And obviously, you're going to miss certain details. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not going to be a little bit back and forth to put some meat on the bone, so to speak, on a couple of issues. You may not know how to calculate child support, so you may need an attorney to calculate child support. So you've resolved most of your issues. I would say all of the major issues are all resolved. So if you come in with that list, we'll put it into what's called a matrimonial settlement agreement. And this is an agreement that sets forth in detail what you've agreed to, what those agreements are based upon, and it just puts in language that helps protect you, like that you both understood you had a right to engage in formal court mechanisms called discovery to ask information from the other person, that you have the right to to go and get experts, an accountant, an appraiser, or all these other people, that you're waiving your right to do all that. This agreement says that you have been told everything from your spouse and that you guys have made a full and fair disclosure to each other. So there's just certain things that will go in this formal agreement that you and your spouse won't know to put on your list. But your list is really just big concepts: where the kids are going to live, what your incomes are, how you're going to divide up the house, how you're going to divide up your bank accounts, how you're going to pay for college. Big issues. So if you go through all the big issues and you reach an agreement, your case is uncontested. Sometimes people use mediation to go and get an agreement with their spouse. That's awesome. I mean, that's something you should really think about. is just getting a mediator that can help you and your spouse put that list together. Then you take that list to an attorney to have it put into an agreement. And now, guess what? Poof, it's uncontested. And the process goes very quick after that. So the main point of today is just to let you know that if you're calling an attorney and you're saying, I have an uncontested divorce, it only means that if you and your spouse have already reached an agreement on everything. If you and your spouse don't have an agreement on everything, it's not uncontested. It is contested, and it might need just a little elbow grease to get you to the point where it is now uncontested. Because like I said, most people go through the divorce process and they end up getting divorced at what is called an uncontested hearing. And again, when we talk about contested or uncontested in New Jersey family court, it means the substance of your divorce: support, custody, division of your assets. It does not mean getting divorced itself. And what's really exciting now is, these uncontested divorces are becoming more and more prevalent, because I think people understand that they can resolve their own issues. They don't need an attorney to sit here and tell you what you should or should not be doing. People are starting to understand that they have the power in their own hands, that they can resolve their own case, that they can do it in a way that's quick and that makes sense for their family. It doesn't cost a lot. I mean, we're in a period of very much economic uncertainty, right? Most people don't know if they're going to have a job tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. We don't know how much longer we're going to be in this bad situation. So it makes sense now more than ever for you to try to sit down with your spouse and reach an agreement. Go use a mediator. See if a mediator can help you resolve things before you both hire attorneys and spend thousands of dollars on legal fees just to get you to a place that probably the two of you could have reached by yourselves without spending all of that money. So what's really exciting is that because of that, because more and more people are doing it, we have actually decided to just make an entire part of our firm just dealing with uncontested divorces. And it's really, we think it's a great service to the community to help people who are able to resolve things themselves get through the whole process inexpensively. Because what's the point? If you resolve everything yourself, what's the whole point if it's not going to be inexpensive? That's the whole point of resolving it quickly. So what we've been doing is, if you have an uncontested divorce, again, that means you and your spouse have an outline of an agreement and you feel comfortable that you and your spouse are both on the same page, that this is the agreement, we have a flat fee program now. Well, we'll do everything for you. We'll put your agreement together. We'll negotiate with the other party, whether they have an attorney or not, to make changes to the agreement, however those changes need to be made. We'll spend time explaining to you everything that's in the agreement, make sure you don't have any misunderstandings about what you're agreeing to, because that's really important, right? And then get the signatures on the page, get your complaint for divorce filed, do all the paperwork we need to do to get you divorced, and then come with you to the final hearing. Either do that in person over Zoom, which is what's happening a lot these days, or we're also doing divorces on the papers, meaning that instead you actually go in front of a judge, you just submit a bunch of things to a judge, and the judge signs something called a judgment of divorce, which divorces you. So we have this really great flat fee program now. So if that's something, if I'm speaking to you and you've got an uncontested divorce, this is a great opportunity for you to really not only keep your costs down, but provide certainty in terms of how much a divorce is going to cost. Because now, if you come to us with an agreement, an outline of an agreement, not only will we be able to estimate how much it's going to cost you, we're going to be able to tell you definitively, this is how much your divorce is going to cost, which is something that is really great, and I think is going to be a great service to so many people. So if that's you, and you've got a divorce that's coming, and you and your spouse are adults, and you guys can sit down, you can resolve everything, give us a call and see if our flat fee program works for you, because it will save you a lot of money. But regardless, just understand, uncontested divorce means that you and your spouse have resolved all of the financial and custody issues in your divorce. It does not mean that you and your spouse just want a divorce. All right. Hope this was informative. These are meant to be quick while you're eating lunch. So I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please give our office a call, 732-529-6937. I'll see you again tomorrow for another Lunch and Learn with Divorce Happy Hour. Bye-bye.